start around 3/4 pound and going up to about a pound. How you guys doing today? Okay, who's first?
Hey, what's all this? Where'd you get all those fish?
Hey, don't knock it till you've tried it. I grew these myself.
Yeah, right. You in what fish market? How do you grow fish like that? Oh, those are what, some sort of bass?
Hey, not bad for a young guy like you. Now, this pond I've got out here, that's turning into a money-making piece of real estate.
Well, how'd you do all that?
Rick, I really want to talk to you. Kind of busy right now. Can we get together on another day?
Yeah, it'll be all right. I'll come back some other time.
Okay, fine. Thanks a lot. Okay, who's first? How many fish you guys want? Got them all right. Hello, Rick.
Hello, Charlie.
Glad you could come by.
I'm glad to come. I had to see this.
I'll be glad to talk to you about it.
What do you call this? This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. You call this fish farming?
You know, Rick, you sound a lot like I did when I first got started. This is a great operation. And no, we call it fish culture. It's been going on in the South for years, and it's beginning to catch on around here now.
Well, if this is such a great idea, how'd you get started?
Well, I did my homework first. I talked to Dan, our county extension agent, and he had quite a bit of information. And after listening to him for a while, I decided it was at least worth an effort to give her a try. And just think about it. It's not often that we get a chance to turn our farm ponds into profit-making acreage.
Was it really that profitable?
Well, you'd be surprised. I sold over $600 worth of fish.
Well, how could I get started in something like this then?
Well, first you have to check to see if your site and general location is suitable. Not every farm pond has a good location, and there are several things to think about. Is your pond at least 1 surface acre in size? Is the watershed for your pond surrounded by pasture or trees? You don't want tillable acreage butted right up to the shoreline. There are too many problems with runoff and sediment. Is your water level stable throughout the year? Are there large areas of the pond that are at least 8 feet deep with an average depth of around 4? Is the temperature of your pond relatively stable?
Well, that doesn't sound all that bad. I think I meet all those requirements. Is that all I need to know to get started?
No, not quite. There is more that you have to know to make sure that the spot is suitable. A very important ingredient is water quality. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You'll have some tests to run. First of all, you need to check the source of the water to the pond. You need to check to make sure that there is no sediment runoff and that it's free of toxic chemicals. You also need to check the dissolved oxygen level in your water. Your water hardness level should be high, and the pH level should be near neutral.
That sounds like a lot of work. Where'd you learn all this, and where'd you get those tests done?
Oh, it sounds a lot worse than it really was. I talked with Dan, and he told me where to get the test kits. After that, it just took some time. And now, I've got all these hybrid striped bass, and I'm making money.
Now, why are you raising hybrid striped bass? I had heard something about farmers raising catfish, but nothing about bass.
Well, it's pretty common that people start out by raising catfish. They're easier to raise, and it's a good way to get your feet wet. But the real money is in the bass. Remember those fish you saw yet?
Well, Charlie learned more about fish farming than just how to pick the right spot. He learned about cage construction, stocking, feeding, potential problems, and harvesting. But like any good farmer, he did his homework. He checked with his county extension agent and got the answers he needed. After he determined that his site was suitable, he got started. First off, he had to construct the cages. Now, the size of the cage is important. For his bass, he needed a cage that was 3 feet in diameter and 4 feet deep. This size cage has a volume of 1 cubic yard. The 1.5-inch polyethylene tube used for the rim served two purposes. First, it provided flotation, and second, it served to create the form of the cage, which in this case was round. Pretty typical for these kind of fish. Now, he used plastic netting, but plastic-coated wire would have worked just as well. He chose the largest mesh size that would still hold his fish. He attached 1-inch tubing at the midpoint of the cage to add buoyancy. As soon as Charlie got his cages constructed, he placed them toward the center of the pond, about 2 cage widths apart, and in water at least 6 feet deep. This allowed for plenty of water and oxygen to flow between cages. The next step was stocking. The first thing to remember about stocking is to think conservatively. From a 1-acre pond, you can expect to harvest about 1,500 pounds of fish. Their market size varies between 1.25 to 1.5 pounds. To determine the number of cages that Charlie could place in his 1-acre pond, he divided the maximum yield by the desired market size and came up with the number of fish he could stock. Since each cage is 1 cubic yard, and the stocking recommendations are 250 fish per cubic yard, the math was simple. He divided 1,000 fish by 250 fish per cage. The result, Charlie could stock 4 cages. You'll need to get fingerling fish that are 4 to 6 inches long. You should stock when the water temperature is above 65 degrees. Okay, Charlie made the cages and stocked the fish. Next on the agenda was feeding. He needed floating fish food that was at least 36% protein. Now, Charlie found that the fish, like humans, needed to be fed at least twice a day. Because the digestion process in fish requires large quantities of oxygen, Charlie knew he couldn't feed them at daybreak when oxygen levels were at their lowest. Instead, he fed them mid-morning and mid-afternoon when the levels had risen. Well, so far, fish culture sounds pretty attractive, doesn't it? Well, Charlie had some other lessons to learn, too. He found that there were a few bumps along this road. As with any type of farming, you can't expect to harvest every single seed you put into the ground. There are losses. Now, Charlie found that he lost about 5% of his fish from disease due to handling during transport and stocking. A few additional fish lost over the course of the summer is not unusual. Excess algae is another problem. As the cages become coated with algae, water and oxygen flow through the cage is reduced. Now, this is another reason to get the largest mesh possible that will still hold the fingerlings. Charlie brushed off the algae occasionally to ensure good water circulation. Now, to alleviate the problems of bugs, turtles, and snakes, Charlie put a lid on each cage. You might be surprised, but when people find out that you've got fish in those cages, well, they've just found their dream fishing spot. To eliminate theft, Charlie added a lock to each cage. Another problem that Charlie avoided by stocking conservatively was low oxygen levels. Nevertheless, Charlie checked the oxygen levels in his cages every morning, and he never worried as long as the levels read above 5 parts per million. If the level ever dropped to less than 3 parts per million, Charlie knew to stop feeding until they went up. Now, this may sound like a lot of work, and if you want it to be successful, it will take some time. The best thing, though, about fish culture is that it's another way to make money on the farm.
Even with those problems, harvesting has never been so easy. It's a great opportunity, Rick. I'll bet you could do the same thing with your farm pond.
Well, it does sound pretty good. Maybe I should go talk to the county agent and have him give me a few pointers.
Well, I've learned one thing. You can't call yourself a fish farmer until you've lost about 1 million fish. Well, it looks like I got a little competition. I never thought I'd see the day. How's business?
It's going good, Charlie. Real good. Actually, a whole lot better than I would have thought. Who would have imagined I could be out here selling fish and making money at the same time?
It feels pretty good, doesn't it?
Does feel pretty good. Been happy to do as well as I've been doing. But I had a question for you, and that was, when you go
For more information on fish culture, contact your county extension service.